All right. Welcome. Welcome to the HEF podcast, the podcast of the Home Education Foundation. It said thanks for watching because I had the stream ending screen up that I was working on when we went live, but it's not ending, it's starting. So we're just going to start the day with some clarification on that. Happy Monday. Welcome to the HEF podcast. That's the podcast of the Home Education Foundation, which is an organization started by Brenda Dickinson, who her and her husband, Craig Dickinson, worked very, very hard back in the 1980s to help draft the bill that would become home education statute in Florida and help secure and carve out rights for parents in those statutes to define home education and give it an existence that we can all live up under and appreciate. And her forethought in calling it home education and not homeschooling was so brilliant because it's so pertinent today, 40 years later. Never the last 40 years, Brenda has worked tirelessly, very tirelessly, and I'm feeling that tired even now. So I know her stamina for 40 years is great, and we're just so glad to have had her there doing that. We're going to talk with her shortly. So thank you for being with us. We want to give a special thank you to our top sponsors. We have Arete, FPEA, Fisher Precious Metals, and the TBHC Group. It's so nice to see this screen full of top sponsors. There are still other top sponsor spots available too. Those aren't the only ones. So if you know someone who has an organization that is very interested in putting parents first and very interested in education, that is our laser focus. That's exactly what we do. We put parents first in education, and we fight for their the most extreme form of freedom, which is take care and teach your own kids and be left alone while you do it. That's what we love, and that's what we're all about. So here we are. Brenda, it's Monday. How are you? To do that, Brenda, say what you said again, because I think it's worth hearing, and no one heard it but me.
I said that for people who are not in the Capitol, who do not have the responsibility of making sure that the laws are not changed to take away rights or privileges, you cannot imagine the weight that you carry on your shoulders because it's all up to you. And we spend way more time than the 2 months they're in session working on these issues with podcasts and virtual meetings and in-person meetings, trying to get agreement on language even before we find sponsors for the bills. And then we have to work really hard to find sponsors who are willing to champion our cause. And I said, it's a weight I've carried for 40 years. Can't leave town during session. During committee meetings, you have to be there. It's a lot of time and a great deal of energy that people don't realize unless they are carrying that responsibility. And I said, I am so happy to shift that weight over to Jason and Crystal, and they're going to do a fantastic job. But I think Jason's beginning to feel a lot of that weight at this point. We're still working together, but
I'm a young, hardy man with lots of white hair coming in, so I'm good for it.
More as this thing moves along.
I'm good for it. Every time that I get those, like this past week and this weekend was a constant. There was no rest. Even last night, I just woke up and couldn't sleep, and the weight is heavy. And the more that I feel that, the more that my heart is filled with gratitude for you. And it's this 2025, and we go all the way back to 1985. That's 40 years. 40 years of you living that. And I've been in it a day, right? I mean, a little bit longer than that. But, I look at the small amount of time, and my heart just breaks for you. And I'm so thankful so immensely thankful for the rich, very rich life that we're able to lead, and the home education statutes that are written the way that they are, and the forethought and the wisdom that you had, the tenacity to not back down in moments where I mean, I've had people yelling at me over this past week
Weekend,
over
yes.
this.
I
Yeah.
mean, we're working Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's like it all just blurs together. It's like, what day of the week is
Mm-hmm.
this?
And they're not happy to hear from us. Real, I mean, me. Maybe it's me. Maybe they were happy to hear from you. I doubt it.
Nope.
We hold a very thin line, and a one that people don't understand. Oftentimes,
Right.
there's so much that when we speak up and we say, "Hey, this is important," they go, "Huh? What? Why?" And we've got to lay that case out, and it's not welcome in a lot of ways. Everybody's making career moves and shifts, and there's money being, you know, moved around through
Follow the
appropriations
money.
and budgets, and yeah, and it oftentimes it's that's what's really kind of pushing things, and it is a David and Goliath battle, but it isn't fixed with one small pebble.
Well, I
It's
think
been
that they
40 years
bypass.
of constant David and Goliath
I
moments.
think more recently they've
Mhm.
bypassed me and gone to you because they think they might be able to pull the wool over your eyes since you don't have the history, or that
Yeah.
you might be more congenial and not stand your ground. But oh, well, they found out that you can be congenial and stand your ground. And we
Yeah.
are fighting tooth and nail over some of the things in this bill. And
You know,
other people are not happy with us.
no. Being congenial and holding your ground, it
Challenging.
it is challenging. I think I nearly had to bite my tongue off just to keep from using it at one point this past week to let cooler heads prevail, and it is. I'm grateful for moments like that. I feel like God's wisdom comes in to kind of like give a peace in a moment and give clarity where if I just sit still and wait for a minute, the right moment to say and the right words to speak will come, and that's happened. It is not easy though. Like it's not a by any stretch. And my mind in those moments, I think about you've done this for 40 years, and that push and pull, that tug. You're in the weeds and granular over verbiage, and then you back out to remind them why we're in the weeds because it matters, and then you have to go back into the weeds, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. So thank you for all the years that you've put into this. It is never going to be lost on me that this is how, it came to be. And if nothing else, as we move forward with the home education, the vision and our mission, it will be to keep that legacy alive, and to remind people of our roots so that as we move forward, Florida's unique. It's got a unique setup, and it has a unique setup because of you. And it's important that we keep a sharp eye on that. People compare it to Texas or Utah or Arizona or, Virginia, et cetera, like all these other states. And it's different. Yeah, Florida is unique in its construction of its statutes and in the way that our home education laws are crafted. So the stuff that works in other places might not work here, and the things that we're able to do are not the way it's been done in other states. And so that can both give peace of mind in moments and give you a whole new list of things to be concerned about. Because
Absolutely. Well,
it's not copy pasted by anything.
I
Go
think
ahead.
a lot of people have a misconception if something is not in the law, then they're free to do whatever they want to do until they
Mm,
run into other government agencies or law enforcement um, personnel
hmm
who want to impose their requirements on home educators. And if
Sure.
it's not protected in law, you have no right to stand against them.
hmm
Let me just flash back in history. we had, at one point, the legislature was trying to clamp down on truancy in the public schools. And so the law enforcement agents, sheriffs and police, had an agreement to enforce the laws pertaining to truancy. And so any child that was picked up in a park or in a public place, they wanted to pick up and, take them back to school. And we had to really clarify that home educated students have a right to be wherever their parents allow them during the day, and they aren't confined to home during school hours. And so if we had not had the law on our side, we would have our children at least terrorized by law enforcement. But we were able to use the law and work with the districts, get them educated to when law enforcement called into them to find out if a child was registered in a home education program, that they simply backed off and left the child alone. So, I mean, it's little things that you don't even realize, but having that in statute protects us from the encroachment of other agencies. That's one of the issues we're facing right now, that newcomers to the state of Florida do not understand that the law is a protection. And so we're fighting really hard to try to keep the protection for home education instructional programs, those programs that have been in existence for 20 years in the state of Florida, offering classes to parents who feel like it would be better to be taught in a group setting, whatever it is. For example, robotics is pretty hard to do that on your own. So you need a group setting, but we don't want any other regulations coming on those programs. So there's really a balance that we have to find between just enough accountability and no accountability to make sure that those rights are protected.
Yeah. And if I could just kind of bring up an example of that that's current right now, there is a legal battle over Coconut Creek. I have up on the screen, Brenda. You can't see it, but I've pulled up the article about the Coconut Creek homeschool facility. What is that? What's a homeschool facility? That's a great question. As you keep looking down, it is a South Florida family looking to the courts for clarification, as it's not so much he said, she said issue, but instead an interpretation of the law. This is from local10.com news. They say they became a homeschool co-op with around 17 students. They're educating their children and their children's friends and family members. And they have a homeschool co-op, and it's a big gray area, constitutes a school versus a homeschool program. That's the real question. And the line here that's interesting is it's all about what code to follow. It really kind of all comes down to whenever these things blow up, and it comes down to like what code or what language do you point to help define this out. What's interesting is the whole kind of spotlight got turned on whenever the ranch had a barn fire, allegedly killed a horse, and that kind of sparked interest, and everyone starts putting it under a microscope. So some sort of tragedy happens, or some accident, something that sparks interest. Then the interest is pulled, the spotlight is put on, and then everyone goes, "Oh, what are you doing? Do you have permission to do that?" And there's no definition. What is a homeschool co-op? What is homeschooling? Homeschooling is not actually even in statute in Florida. We don't call it homeschooling. It's not the legal definition. So what are y'all doing? How do you distinguish a homeschool co-op in statute from a birthday party? There's no there's no legal distinction in law. from those two things. They're just get-togethers of people. So then the question is like, well, what is it? How does it work? What statutes govern this? And then when you're dealing with people who have an intent to just get you out of their way or see you stop, they can just rely on the fact that it's nebulous to point to something that it looks similar to, and then just latch on to what does exist in statute that they can point to. And in this case, they're going, hey, you look like a school. You're operating a school, and you don't have a license to operate a school, and you don't have this regulation and this code, and you're not meeting that requirement. And so they're slapping them with, you look like a school, you act like a school, therefore you must be a school. Shame on you for not following all the rules that we have in place for schools. And that's what kind of brings us to, well, our bill, really. When we were working really, really hard earlier on in this session to get our bill put forward, if you're wondering what our bill is, you'll see Senate Bill SB 1440 and House Bill HB 1565. Those are our two bills. So they're meant to be identical, but there was a kind of a mix-up when working with one senator and then transferring the language to the other senator. It dropped off the updated version, so we're going to have to get that amended to come up to bring them identical. The fullest version is the House Bill, HB 1565. So our first stop will be to get them to be identical, and then we'll move from there. But yeah, let's look at them and look at some of the clarity, because people might be wondering, well, like, what does that bill do? What is in that language? And I think that those are things worth looking at, right? So what does this do? What kind of protection does it provide by bringing clarity and definition? Many people don't want definitions, like Brenda said, but I think there's a very real, easy case for demonstrating that we need them. They're important. So what this one does, as we get down into it, well, I mean, you guys are going to love
Wait a
this.
minute. Maybe I want to point out here that because Step Up for Students and AAA are allowed to write their purchasing guides, and they may define them in the purchasing guide, that does not give parents or schools, quote, micro schools or co-ops, any kind of protection. It has to be in statute.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, Step Up or AAA could halfway through the year change their definition or their requirements if it's not in statute.
Mm-hmm. Or if the local code enforcement people or the health department shows up to inspect your kitchen or your facilities, because you have a 4-year-old there and it should be childcare, so you have to have certain type of material on your swing, under your swing sets, and you have to have certain handles, those lever types on the doors. And if you go through all the regulations that are on private schools, you do not want those to be imposed on a home education co-op. So you have to define them in order to say we're not this. And then you have a statute to point to that you can back off those agents of whatever department are trying to enforce the other laws on you. And so that's why it's a protection, and people do not understand. It's like, well, we don't want the government intruding. Well, then you have to tell them you can't intrude.
Yeah. And if I could bring up, I'm going to put this up on the screen too, because I was Crystal and I were digging through files this morning, and I was like, hey, somebody had mentioned, because we were talking about restoring the original definition of home education instructional programs. That's what we're about to start talking about, what our bill does. And somebody said, what are you talking about? That was never the original definition. So here I have.
This is why I save all the files.
Yeah, this is why.
Good job, Crystal.
Yeah. So here I actually have a copy from September 28th, 2023. So this would be right after HB1 passed. And the PEP scholarship was just started, the very first version of the purchasing guide. And here it is: tuition and fees for home education instructional programs for personalized education programs. So this is the definition that existed in the purchasing guide. This is the definition for PEP, and then it goes down and it talks about parents, and then here are the definitions for an eligible home education instructional program, and that program must be a program selected by the parent as a part of their PEP students' parent-directed education instruction. Programs may not be full-time or full-time equivalent. Private schools, virtual schools, public or charter schools are not considered home education programs. Crystal, could you send me the updated version so that I can do a comparison of this side by side so they can see the before and after? I think that would be great too. Provide courses and or activities for PEP students that enhance or enrich the child's learning opportunities. Have publicly available and reviewable program descriptions of courses and activities. Have a published tuition fee schedule. Be in a non-residential physical location. Cannot be in a home. And be a business organization. Tuition fees may not be payable to an individual. Look at that. The original definition as it landed right there in the purchasing guide. Boom. Smoking gun, there it is a non-residential physical location. Somebody from Step Up actually told me recently, they were like, that was never in the original definition. What are you talking about? What are you guys pushing for? And it was over the phone, so they couldn't see my eyes crossed when they said it, but boy did they. So here it is. This is very interesting. Did you send it to me?
Yeah, I just sent it.
Okay. Let me pull it up. I'm waiting for it to come through, I think. Which email did you send it to?
HEF.
HEF? Okay. It'll come through then. I'll just wait.
Are you going to talk about why each one of those points were in there?
You can, if you'd like to. I'm distracted trying to pull this up.
Okay. Well, we feel like they need to be a business in the state of Florida. So number one, those programs that are popping up that are co-ops, micro schools, whatever you want to call them, other than a home education instructional program, need to have some way for parents or the government to find them so that then you know who they are, who's running the program. We believe that it's extremely important. It wasn't in this first definition, but we believe it's extremely important that the personnel that operate these programs are fingerprinted, because as people know, there is so much child trafficking, there's so much pedophilia in our country. I mean, there's been raids. We had recently a raid in North Florida in our backyard, and the people that they picked up included a surgeon from Tallahassee. So you can't on the surface just think, oh, everybody's a good person, we don't need to make sure they're not a criminal. And so we think that fingerprinting is really important. That we've added as we've gone on to our legislation, but somebody has to be responsible. So what good is running a background screening on the person running the program if indeed they're a pedophile? So wouldn't this be a good source for somebody that's a pedophile to have a source of children? And we don't want to think about those things, but we've got to be realistic that in this case, having no regulation could be very harmful to a child. One of the other things we put in there, because some of the people that are starting these have zero background in a business, and so they don't know you should carry liability insurance. We need to tell them, because what if that fire had included a child instead of a horse? I mean, animals are important and we want to protect them too. But what if a child had died in a fire and they had no liability insurance? But if you're operating them in a residence and you're new to the business world, you could really get yourself into some serious problems. So we believe you should tell people that, because they have that then base of knowledge.
So here's the purchasing guide. The original's on the left, the 2023 version, and it clearly states, you can see as I have it highlighted, be in a non-residential physical location, cannot be in a home. And the updated 2025 version for January says, be operated in a physical location, cannot be online. That's very different. That's very different. And so when we're talking about situations like the one from the article, and as things get blown up, the very real need for a definition to be able to safeguard, to define something and safeguard it, needs to exist in statute, not something that on a whim the SFO can just decide tomorrow and throw out a February or a April or a March update to the purchasing guide is different. Because on a whim, that can just change.
Well, the other thing about that definition is now it can't be online is because there's another bill that allows private virtual programs to be a way that parents can use their money. So they're going to take out online, and they probably will take out the physical facility because it could be in your home. You're spending your money on private virtual curriculum. So, I mean, we know there's going to be a change because that language is not going to comply with what they're trying to do now. So instead of it just being Florida virtual school, they want to get maybe even some Christian online programs in there. We're not trying to stop anybody from doing whatever the legislature approves. We're just trying to have some protections in statute so that the SFOs, or now I hear that the University of Central Florida is basically writing the purchasing guide.
Crystal,
they don't have any guidelines
to make sure we didn't lose it.
We still keep going. We still have the feed, but we didn't have your camera, and now we're back to the top sponsors.
I know we're on the top sponsors thing. I'm sorry, Brenda. We had a technical difficulty. My computer kind of did something weird in the middle of...
The feed was still there up until you switched to the top sponsors. It just didn't. It wasn't showing you anymore. It was still showing Brenda.
Pulled all of my background documents to one screen, and I didn't want them displayed. So give me a second to reorient that, and we'll get back to discussing. Sorry, Brenda.
They can still hear us. They just can't see our faces. Yeah. So if you want to keep going, they can. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Keep going. I apologize.
So if you think about it, the micro schools are trying to get into Florida. They're not even a Florida-based business. So what we're doing is giving our tax dollars to a company in Utah or Delaware or Arizona. And the money is flowing out of the state of Florida, some of which are taxpayer dollars. Other of that money for PEP is coming from Florida corporations that are not paying their taxes to the state of Florida, but their deferred taxes into a 501c3, which are the scholarship funding organization, Step Up and AAA. And so we're taking money from Florida corporations that should be paid into the state coffers, but now we're sending that money to Arizona or whatever state these companies are incorporated in. I personally have a problem with that. I don't know that the legislator's going to have a problem because, their mantra this year is, well, let the parents do whatever they want to do.
Yeah. Well, the other problem that we have with this is that without definition, like if there is no definition in statute for a home education instructional program, and the scholarship funding organizations can, at their own discretion, at any point, change those definitions. And they already have, as we've shown you, changed some things to allow in-home programs to fit in due to pressure from people who wanted their programs to qualify. The name home education is attached to that category, home education instructional program. So if a micro school or whatever else is coming into Florida trying to take advantage of the scholarship funds as a business model, and they're not operating as a true home education family would, then anything that they happen to do that gets some sort of blowback is going to be attached to the home education name. It's going to be home education families that are slandered in the media. It's going to be home education families that they're pushing for restrictions on. And that's a big deal. So it may not seem like a big deal right now, but the first time something terrible happens in one of these programs claiming to be a home education instructional program, but are not really coming from a home education mindset, the first time something happens that requires some sort of reaction or response from the legislature, then our freedoms as home educators are at risk. So that's a big driving factor behind needing these definitions clarified in statute so that we have those protections in place of what is and what isn't a home education instructional program.
So that the regulations don't fall on the non-residential programs that have been operating for 20 years without any kind of incident that has occurred.
Yeah, and I don't think all the legislators realize that, how long some of these programs have been operating and serving the home education
before
community.
The scholarship ever came around.
Well before the scholarship was ever even considered. And these are not the programs that are coming in almost predatorily trying to grab at the funds. They are well-established programs. And we do not want to see them punished for bad actors that are coming in under other motives and then trying to fit under that umbrella. So,
and I'd like to say that if you hear naysayers, scholarship naysayers in your Facebook groups and different things like that, you know what? There's a very real need to understand the scholarship program, how it functions, not just to react in fear to its existence. And there's a very real need to get involved and understand the nuance and the actual details of the fight, and not just to react to the broad stroke of it, because we're capable of holding the line on this. The thing about this is it's so critical and important is the definition for home education instructional programs. The listing of the name of it is in statute, but the definition's in the purchasing guide, and that can change on a whim. Well, who votes on that? I know that Michelle Matthews Wilson says that it's the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities at UCF. I understand that that's a recent thing, but what about the Florida residents? What about the people who have voted on their legislators and their senators, and they're informed about these and they vote on these issues? Their representatives. When the definition isn't in statute, that's not who's voting on these things. Who's voting on these things is the SFO, and maybe the families that they happened to work with at the Florida Center for Unique Abilities. So the input isn't coming primarily from the legislators and senators who we voted for to put there to do these things, because the definition's in the purchasing guide. And I would personally at least like to see a very, very broad-stroked definition that sets some basic guidelines to carve out a difference between school-looking programs that are full service, that all of these pop-ups from all over the U.S. and different places are wanting to find a place to fit. I'd like to see a carve out.
They're coming to Florida for money. Let's just get to the bottom line.
Yeah,
and I would like to see a way to preserve those legacy, been here for forever, care about families. They're deeply ingrained in their communities. They have been built from the grassroots up. They have families. They have a long history of enrichment in their communities. That's where they've started. They've gestated. They've grown. They've had growing pains. People have made sacrifices. They've poured into their communities. And I would like to see them protected. I'd like to see that carved out, at least a definition to separate those two entities and protect them, because it is inevitable. You saw the article at the beginning. They're like, hey, you look like a school. You got to follow all the school rules. And since there's nothing in statute, the restrictions will come down. Oh, you blew up a horse? Cool. Now let's regulate you. that's going to happen. A dog bites a kid, kid plays in, running around, ventures into traffic, gets hit, a house burns down. Like any number of issues come, and the very first one, that's brings enough attention to something, it's going to be like, oh, what are they doing? Pitchforks. Why are they siphoning off funds? Oh, wait. That was the best part. The very top comment at the bottom of that news article was, look at these people siphoning off funds from the public school. Boom, there it goes. That's not even true, by the way. The public schools can actually be participants in the scholarship program, so the money can funnel right back into the public schools, but no one cares about any of those details. They just want to get upset about something and blow it up. And when that happens, we need good definitions in place to protect those programs, to protect those peoples. I think I've made that case. So I think we've all made that case very clear at this point. We're beating a horse.
We don't want to beat the horse to death.
We beat that horse. We already blew it up. Let's not keep beating it. Poor thing. So let's go to the bill that we have in place, and let's look at the language and what it does. It does, in fact, restore the definition. I have it highlighted here. There it is. A home education instructional program, as defined at 1002.395. So it clarifies in the unique abilities scholarship where the definition will live, because there was a typo calling home education instructional programs home education programs. And so that typo is being fixed. And then as you forward into the home education instructional programs, you're going to see it where I'm struggling here because I went through and highlighted some stuff. Here it is. It means a business entity registered with the Division of Corporations of the Department of State, which will require them to register as a Florida business. So these businesses outside will also have to then pay taxes in Florida as a business in Florida, which is great. We like that too. Which offers classes and activities at a non-residential location for parents to supplement and enhance their child's home education program. So that key thing that's in this, we just want it restored. And then people are like, well, where was that original definition? Here it is right here. I'm going to pull it back up on the screen. This on the right-hand side is the 2023, right after HB1 passed. PEP was brand new. Must be in a non-residential physical location, cannot be in a home. And now the version of the PEP handbook says that, our purchasing guide says, be operated in a physical location, cannot be online. So that's a very real change that happened, and it happened really quick, by the way.
And we pushed back on it.
We sure
pretty
did.
hard.
We said no, thank you. Mm-hmm.
But we had nothing to stand on, and when they changed the definition, there was nothing we could do about it.
Yeah, and another interesting point is I am sort of OCD about saving previous versions of documents because I'm a writer and I've lost too many early drafts that I needed later. So that's why I save everything when there's a change. I try to make sure I have the previous version downloaded before they replace it. But had we not done that, the previous versions are not available anywhere on their website. Mm-hmm. So all you would have is the current definition and no way to go back and show that originally it actually said something else. Yeah.
So anytime that you hear people naysaying on Facebook about the scholarship program or things like that, try not to get swept up in the broad strokes of fear. Share resources like this that where we dive into and pay attention to the details. The details matter. The words matter. Language matters. And pick a frontier, pick a battle line, and stand on it. There are local representatives and senators you in your districts and areas that you can share this with. We can put actually, Crystal, today, why don't we do that? Why don't we put a little blurb about HB1565 and put a screenshot of the old purchasing guide and the new purchasing guide in that section to put what we're trying to do, make it very clear what we're trying to do is restore that definition.
To put it in the forum, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can use this video to maybe even pull like a little consolidated definition, nothing too long, something simple, so that people can understand it and see what it is in a very highlighted way. And then if they want to share something like that with their legislators, they can on a local level. and reach out to them and say, hey, this is important. We want to protect these legacy home education programs. We want to be fiscally responsible with the money that is flowing through the scholarship program in our state. We want to be a good example to other states as to how that money should be handled and how parents should be put first in their choices that come through. And so while parents should have access to these choices like micro schools and all these other programs, we just want to see a carve out that separates out the legacy home education instructional programs from those bigger school-like programs, so that as restrictions come, they can go to the proper venue and match up with, function and form where they belong. And then these legacy programs that are smaller and more nimble don't get swept up into bigger restrictions for those school-like programs. That's very important to us. So
if you happen to know, or even if you live in the district, of the committee members on the pre-K 12 budget committee, it is going to be heard in committee tomorrow morning at 9:00. So we just found out about this today. So we're going to work really hard to put together some bullets and try to get those to the committee members. But you could really help if you're a constituent and you believe in what we're trying to do by getting the definition and statute, especially those people who are in one of these home education instructional programs, such as, I'm just going to give you a couple of examples, but there are others in the other areas of the state. But there's one in Lutz that is Class Source. There's Trinity over there. I don't know about all of the ones.
It's called Teach. There's Heed, Saints.
Heed in South Florida. There's a couple in Broward. I'm trying to think of the name of it right off the top of my head. I can't. Something about
there's one that's called Jack's Teach too, isn't it? Yeah.
Something utilization of the brain hub, the hub down in Broward, and there's one over in Jacksonville. They're sprinkled all over the state. In fact, there's one that we heard of in Orlando that is now being sued. And if they had a director and owner's director, and what is it called? Errors and omission insurance. The board members couldn't have been sued personally, but because people love to sue, then these people are being sued personally. So that's why we've got in there insurance, and people don't know until there's a problem that is arisen. We have a lot more experience working with some of these groups who have now become 501c3s in order to be able to function out of a church, so that the church doesn't have to pay property taxes. So there's a lot of nuances in that. In fact, we ought to put together a workshop, Jason.
It'll be a 4-hour workshop. Anybody want a college credit?
yeah, I think they ought to get college credit for running one of these. Heaven forbid. They are very intense business issues that these groups need to think about. I love the way they operate and bring kids together. I'm thrilled that that parents are able to spend their money, because they've been paying for this out of pocket up until the time the scholarship was created. But I do want them to understand that there are challenges, and we are trying to help them. We are not trying to eliminate them or put more regulation on them that then is necessary. But there needs to be some part in statute that not only would inform those programs, but would also cause those programs to operate in the sunshine. And so,
yes. I'm laughing because
can I read her comment? I was reading it too.
Yes.
She
I'm
said,
not laughing at you, Brenda. Sorry.
She said, how do
I
we
wondered
find,
why did I say that was so funny.
she said, how do we find out if one of our local reps are on these committees? Tell me how, like I'm a child, more accurately, like I'm a tired, distracted 42-year-old with 3 kids under 8 running around screaming while I'm listening to this and trying to understand.
Love it.
You're gonna post the link to the committee members, right?
Yes,
There's actually
pull
on our
that.
website, if you go to the information tab, you can see Find My Rep. Click on that. And that's going to take you to a place where you can search that up. You can search for your representative here. But then also, you can get to it in a number of ways. But right up here at the top, you're going to see the word committees. And if you click on committees, you're going to see all these committees come down. The committee that's hearing it right now is Pre-K-12 Budget Subcommittee, that's set to hear it next. And once you click it, here are all of their pictures and all of the places. Here are all of the people. And you know what? They're good. I've talked with a lot of them. They're good. I love them. They're great to talk to. They've got a rich history. Some of them very, very much care about these things. I haven't spoken to every single person on this list, but I will say that like they're not adversaries, so don't go in it that way. They're good and they care and they're fighting some tough battles. But our bill's not the only one that anyone cares about right now. There are some heavy issues. St. Johns County is putting heart rate monitors on children in classrooms and using it as behavioral modification and putting it up on a board so everyone can see. Man, I don't know how they even get away with some of this stuff, but there's a bill that they're working on to make parents have to have written consent for things, not passive consent, meaning the schools can't just go and do what they want to do and then alert the parents, and only if the parents say no do they not do it. There are bills where they're fighting over some really major tough stuff right now. So ours, when you see this Pre-K-12 budget subcommittee, ours is not the only one that they're going to be concerned about. It's not even a big one because we're small. Home education, small potatoes. The only thing that makes it big and a big deal is that they poured a scholarship into it, and it's now front and center spotlight issue, and it's one they don't quite fully understand because there's so many nuances and so much.
Yeah. So just to clarify, if you're not sure who your representatives are, do that first and jot down the names of your representatives. And then you can go to the committee link and see if your representative is on this particular committee or any other committee that we mentioned that we want people to reach out to.
Thank
and
you for asking that,
as this bill goes through, there will be probably 2 other committees in the House that it will have to go through. So we need to do this at every committee stop.
Yeah, and to be clear, our bill may not be the one that makes it through. That's also a part of the reality that we live in, is that there was originally no intention to have very many educational bills at all, and now I think there's like 70 or 80. And so
all of them won't be heard, but there's definitely going to be a committee bill on scholarships, which carries way more weight than an individual bill.
Right. All of the bills kept touching scholarship issues, and so they were like, let's put a scholarship. So the committee tomorrow is actually a workshop to hear those critical issues. So we'll keep you posted. Thank you guys for listening.
Reaching out to the committee could help impact whether these issues make it onto whatever committee bill they decide to put forward. So please still do that. Yeah.
And a discussion in the workshop. If they hear from one constituent or 2 or 3, I mean, those legislators are going to be listening. If you call in and say, I'm in a group, there are 100 kids in this group, and the people in our group are opposed to, or we want to support whatever we've told you today. And we'll get later today, hopefully not too much later today, Jason and I will have a bulleted list of those things that we've just talked about, because we're going to try to get those in the hand delivered to the committee members today.
Yep. Yes. we're running short of time. We do have another call to hop on to, so we're gonna bring it to a close. We want to thank everybody for their awesome attention today and for tuning in. We had quite a number of viewers consistently throughout this. A lot of engagement in the comments. We really appreciate all of the questions and things that you ask. One of the reasons why people ask, why do you do your podcast on Facebook, is because it's not just a podcast. It's an interactive, it's a community interaction for us, where we can see your comments and take your questions and interact with you. Whereas a normal podcast doesn't always quite do that. A lot of times they just take their content and broadcast it out. They talk about what they want to talk about and broadcast it out. And that's not what this is. So share this as a resource with others so that they can come and participate, as well as benefit from the information that's here. Also, I am looking still for interns to help with some of the content stuff like this, where they can take our bigger form content and break it down into smaller, digestible pieces, those helpful snippets that we can get reposted, so that maybe some of those more bite-sized chunks can just be pulled out of the middle of the video to stand alone, and be shared around and things like that as well. So if you know someone who's looking for an internship, we have a 501c3. It is something that they can get Bright Futures hours for helping us with. So only serious applicants need to apply, but you can send your resume to info@flhef.org, and you can take a look at that. And thank you all. We appreciate it. We'll keep updating you here as things progress, week by week. If there's something emergency, pay attention to the forum. We're going to be getting people into that. Also, we are about to pull the trigger on opening up our Discord server. So if you're still interested in being one of those early adopters and getting in and poking holes in what we do, I would love to have you in that. So just email me at the same email address, info@flhef.org, and tell me add to app. And what I'll do is I'll get you onboarded into our Discord app, because I'd love to hear what you think about it. It's going to be a bit of a ghost town at first, so you can just see the functions and things like that. But if you're a person who's a community leader in your area and you're looking for a communication tool that'll help you organize those people, especially for things like this, that's it. That's what we're working on. So I don't have anything else, Crystal.
No.
Awesome. Brenda?
I don't.
All right. I apologize for the technical issues. I don't know why, but my computer just decided to do updates in the middle of our stream and all kinds of other stuff like that, and I lost a lot of stuff, but I'm glad that the stream didn't go down. So thank you guys for being patient through all of that and being with us and sticking with us. We're going to say thank you again one more time to our top sponsors. Thank you, Arete, Fisher Precious Metals, FPEA, and the TBHC Group for sticking with us. It's going to be a fun fight this year. Stay tuned. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see y'all next week, if not in the forum somewhere, where we're going to share some very, very important information. But y'all have your Monday.